Hey Renovation Nation, I hope you guys are ready for another day in the grind. Today we are tackling some bathroom questions. So today we're talking about bathroom tile finishes. Let's start with glossy finishes. Now these are tiles that have reflective surfaces. They have a lot of brightening up for a lot of spaces like floors and walls, bathrooms and kitchens, and best of all, they're super easy to clean. Next up we have matte surfaces. Now these are more granular and slip-resistant finishes that you find when you have wet areas like a shower. They can even be used in living spaces. They're anti-slip, so they're best when they're used in bathrooms and even outdoors. Now we've got textured finishes, a little bit different than matte. Also very good with anti-slip, so they're best for wet areas like a bathroom, especially when you're getting out of the shower. They're a little bit more granular, so you do feel the resistance, which is why it's anti-slip. And now we've got honed materials. Now these tiles could be glazed or unglazed, but they're finished in a satin finish. So they're not glossy, they're meant to be nice and matte. Now the good part about this is you've got anti-slip once again, but they are porous, which means it's more upkeep, so you definitely want to keep more maintenance on honed materials. And next up we have Lepato finish. Now this is a form of a luster that's not to the full reflective finish that you have for polished finishes. It does have more of a natural feel, which gives it an uneven texture in terms of what you see with the polish. And now let's talk about a very popular finish. This is a polish finish. Now this is double fire treated. So it means once you have your color and your pattern, it's then treated with another clear coat on top, which makes it super resistant. It's excellent for spaces like living spaces, kitchens, bathrooms, but be careful, it does show a lot of scratches because of its polished finish part. So make sure you keep some upkeep on that. And lastly, we have glazed finishes. Now glazed finishes can be applied to either ceramic or porcelain tile. Now these can also be shown with different finishes like matte, glossy, and textured. It makes it very easy to clean and ideal for wet spaces. Wow, that was a lot. Let's take a little break now. If you have a favorite tile that you love to use and you want to share it with us, leave a comment below for a chance for us to show it off in our next video. Now we'll talk about what are the differences between ceramic and porcelain tiles. Let's start with cost. First of all, ceramic and porcelain are excellent substitutes for using versus marble. They are great with cost in that way, but you have to take into account porcelain tile could be much more cost effective in the majority of projects. Now when it comes to ceramic, because there's so many versatile ways to use ceramic, you have to be careful to watch costs on this place. If you have a ceramic tile that's handmade and there's plenty of them, that could drive the cost up really high. So take that into account. Next up, we'll talk about density. Now porcelain tiles are made up of a tighter molecular structure that make them more dense, definitely more than ceramic and marble. And now we'll talk about genetic makeup. Porcelain tiles are made through body with its color. That means anywhere you cut it, you'll see the color all the way through. Versus a ceramic tile, which is a color on top and then a glaze to finish it off. And now we'll talk about the uses. Now ceramic tiles are much more delicate, so you do want to be careful where you place these. They're beautiful, they come in a vast variety of colors and designs, perfect for kitchen backsplashes, accent walls, and lots of fun places to use it for. Now porcelain tiles, they're so much more durable, so you have more access to be able to use this in interior, exterior, floors, walls, even countertops. So select wisely. How do I calculate how many tiles I need to order for my project? Let's do a sample case study. You have a bathroom, it's a 5x7 bathroom. You've got a sink, a toilet, and a tub. Okay? So what do we need to calculate here? We have floor tile, we have wall tile. When you have a floor tile, you want to measure left and right how many square feet you have. How do you do that? 5x7 minus the tub, the length of the tub, and you calculate that and times the feet by each other. So let's say it ends up being a 5x5. 5 times 5, 25 square feet. That's how much you need for floor tile. Now don't forget, you do want to take into account overage when you order your tile. So always give yourself about a 10 to 15% overage of tile so you have enough square footage for any cuts. Can floor tiles be placed on the walls? The answer is yes, but the trick question is, can wall tiles be placed on the floors? That's where you run into something that you have to check with the tile vendor and the manufacturer. So you are able to put floor tiles on your walls if you're going up the shower wall or just a decorative wall outside of the shower or tub area, kitchens, etc. Yes. Now if you have a wall tile though, and you want to place that on the floor, you do have to check if it's meant for certain areas. For example, you have a wall tile that's meant to be in a dry space. but you want to put it in your shower floor. Now, some tiles are not meant to be in wet areas, so they won't work in that case. So you do have to check that with your manufacturer. In some other cases, you want to put wall tiles on the floor outside of the shower, which is a dry space. However, the thickness of that tile is not thick enough to be acceptable as a floor. So you have to check thicknesses, manufacturer specs, and where they're meant to be in locations. What are the advantages of tiling floor to ceiling versus other options? Now in option one, if you have a floor to ceiling tile, you're easier to clean, it's definitely more durable for the space, and it's easier for moisture to be wiped off of the walls. So that's a great scenario there. Now in option two, when you go to chair rail height, means you're going halfway up the wall with tiles outside of the tub or shower. This gives you, again, more space for you to be able to clean and wipe off, especially with moisture in wet areas. And also, it creates a half look inside of the style of the bathroom. So the rest of it above is Durock, and you're able to paint it any color you'd like, or wallpaper it even, or do a special finish. So it gives you more flexibility there. And the third option, where you don't tile anything outside of your tub or shower, it does leave you open to more moisture issues, so you do want to take into account. But if you're tiling just the baseboard, which I do recommend, you're gonna have something that's more cleanable when you're cleaning off your floor tile in the end. Should I tile my ceiling? Now my question back to you is, where are you applying this tiled ceiling? If you're going to apply to a steam shower, that's ideal. It's perfect actually, because that's where you get the most moisture. And tiles help to be a clean ceiling for you to have inside of that shower. Now if it's going anywhere outside of that, now it becomes more decorative. So you have to ask yourself, where am I with cost, application, use, and also what types of tile am I using? Small, medium, large, slabs, that could get very costly. And slabs have a much more complicated way to apply to the ceiling to make sure it never falls down. So that's all the things you want to think about when you're thinking of putting an application of a tiled ceiling in your bathroom. What should I worry about when ordering tiles from vendors online? That is super duper iffy. So if you're ordering from online, the first thing you want to do is get a sample. Never order anything without a sample. There could be variation issues, color issues, and it never looks like it does online. So please, please, please order a sample. Number two, if you're getting your square footages from your contractor, excellent. If you're doing it yourself, make sure you account for overage, because that will affect the overall square footage you'll need to order from your vendor. Number three, lead times. How long is it going to take to get to your house? You want to know that so you can plan backwards from your install date, and that you want to know from your contractor. Number four, is it natural or man-made tiles? The reason for this is, if you have a natural stone that you're ordering, you want to make sure that the veining and the coloration is just like you'd like it. And the only way to ensure that is if you request a picture of the lot that you're ordering from. This will allow you to understand the color variation you'll have when you receive the order. And number five, delivery. Is it being delivered to you in a crate, in boxes? How is the delivery coming to you when? The reason this is important is because oftentimes these come to you in a big crate, and these could weigh well over 100, 200 pounds. So are you carrying this inside as your contractor? You want to make sure all of those logistics are worked out before you place your order. What are the different types of tile installations that I can do with my tiles? So we'll talk about patterns here. One of the first few and most popular ways of installing tiles is the brick pattern, which is also called as the staggered pattern. This is when your tiles are not exactly stacked on each other, but they're offset so the seams are every other tile. The next one up is the stacked one, also very popular. The stacked one is when the tile is just put right on top of each other on the next one. The seam runs consistently throughout the entire tile. And then we have herringbone style. Now herringbone is when the tiles are placed on a 45-degree angle and they're placed one after the other, almost like in an interlocking way. This is different than chevron, which is very similar, but instead they're cut on a 45 and they're met, the seam runs the entire way up and down, and they're met at each diagonal. And then we also have basket weave pattern. Now basket weave is a little tricky, so I do suggest to lay it out before you put it down on the mortar. But basket weave is when you have a tile that's meeting another tile in a circular type of pattern, but with square edges. So it is very tricky, but it's very interesting once you have it down. Now there's many other ways that you can install your tile patterns. These are just some of the most common ways and most popular. They all look great, so make sure you do a dry lay before you actually install any type of pattern. What are the pros and cons between small and large tiles? Now this could have so many answers, but I'll give you my favorites. We have small tiles that are best used for areas that are smaller in proportion. So if we have a very small guest bathroom and we want to really work with the right proportions on the walls and on the floors, stick with some small tiles. If we have larger tiles, you definitely want to use those in big expanded bathrooms, like a big primary bathroom where you have a large tub, a shower, double vanity. Those are the best uses for larger tiles. They're also best used if you're using them outside, because you do have a larger area and bigger amount of square footage that you're going to be working with, so it's best to be used in those bigger areas as well. Now, what if I don't want to use a tile? What are my other options? Okay, so this is where we get a little bit fun and creative. So let's think about using a mosaic tile. Now, mosaics are beautiful because they have so many different ways to be applied and looked at when they're installed. You can also use some water jet cut tiles. This is cut on a machine, so they're perfectly made to be put together into a certain kind of design. The design could be anything. It could be a mural, it could be a design, a pattern, and you can make it look as beautiful as you want, as consistent as you want with color. There's basically, the sky is the limit if you go with mosaic. So you do have to take into account cost though. Cost could get very costly here. Mosaics are meant to be a piece of art, so you do want to understand, where are you placing these mosaics? Is it throughout the bathroom, throughout a backsplash? Is it in a certain accent wall? It's ideal if you let this stand out as its own moment, like an accent wall. So think about where you're applying this in your bathroom, in your kitchen. For example, in a bathroom, you may want to work with it as being your shower accent wall or the backsplash to your sink. It will create a moment, a vignette as we call it, and it'll create a beautiful time for you to see it in your bathroom and in your kitchen. Now our next question gets a little bit more technical. How do I finish an outside corner of a bathroom wall? Now this is very technical because you do have to understand what you're using on that wall. Now let's say you go with a porcelain or a ceramic tile and you have an outer wall where you're meeting tile to tile. How does that meet? Now in some instances you are able to miter cut your tiles, which means you're cutting them on a 45-degree angle. So on the outside of the wall, everything looks perfectly lined up as if there was no change to the edge. Now in some instances, the tile might be too thin for you to be able to miter cut on a 45. In those cases, we use a Schluter edge. That's an edge that caps the edge of the corner, and that way you meet the tile to tile without an issue or having a raw exposed edge. Another way that you can cap an outer edge is by using a detailed piece of a bullnose, a quarter round, or even a cap on the edge. Now this all depends on the type of tile you're using. Some come with pre-designed matching colorations to the tile you selected, so you can cap those edges. In some instances, those are not available, and that's where you want to use either a Schluter edge, or if it's a natural tile, like a marble or a stone, you are able to miter cut those because they're natural tile, and you won't have a raw edge. But if you're not meeting on a 45-degree angle, you will want to polish the edge so you don't have a raw, unfinished edge on the end. Where do I start my tile pattern on a wall? Now this is a very good question, and the answer to that can vary. Totally depends on the type of pattern you're doing, the size of your tile, and the size of your wall or floor where you're starting the pattern. So I'll give you an example. If we're doing the brick pattern and you're starting it on a back center feature wall, you ultimately really want it to be centered from the middle of the wall and running outwardsly. But this could also affect how the turn of the side walls meet if you're continuing that pattern across. Because on the left side and the right side, if both sides are exactly symmetrical, you'll want that to continue equally on both sides. Now here's where you might want to shift it one way or the other. If you have a pattern that's meeting on the ends of a wall and you can tell that the tiles are going to get cut very, very short on the two ends, you might want to shift it off by a third so you get a full tile on the detail of that end, and it will change accordingly on the sides as well. So it definitely depends on the size of the tile, the location, and what's going on the side walls too. So definitely pay attention to those two things. Now if you're applying it to a floor, same thing kind of applies. But you want to take into account what is getting mounted over those tiles, like your fixtures, your toilet, your vanity, etc. Those things will also affect what you ultimately see on the floor. So make sure you plan ahead. What is a low maintenance tile? Now with a low maintenance tile, you definitely want to look for something that is more man-made. Now I know for all you people who love marble and natural stone, oh, I love it too, but it is much harder to keep with maintenance and the look of it over the years. It does yellow over time sometimes, especially if you have like a white marble. You also have to think about grout and dyes that could get into them. Because they are natural, they're meant to be this way. Versus a man-made material where maintenance is much easier. The finish on them or the glaze or whatever you have on the top, whether it's matte or glossy or polished, those will remain as they are. As long as you're not taking a hammer to them, you should be fine. But if you're going with natural, you do want to make sure you have maintenance consistently throughout the entire time. If you like to dye your hair, if you have any polishes or anything that you're putting onto these materials, it will affect the ultimate look of the material over time. Can I put tile over a tile? Now, I typically don't recommend this, but on some projects we come across, the budget is very tight. So in those cases, we want to work with what we've got. Sometimes in some bathrooms, you do see tiles that are cemented on underneath. So in those cases, it's a little harder to dig them up and do a new mud job on top. So if we do want to work with the budget and we want to lay a new tile over it, you can. You just have to make sure you have a level floor. So you want to use self-leveling cement over the existing tile so you have a nice level flat substrate. Then you go over it with your new tile. So it is possible, but make sure you prep, and consult your contractor before you start. Now we have a juicy question. I have heated floors. Can I run my tile over it? You definitely can, and honestly, that's one of my favorite things to do, especially if you want to achieve a beautiful, luxurious floor that you walk into nice and warm every day. What you need to do is install radiant heat floors inside, underneath the tiles. This gets installed when you're doing your mud job, so you're able to have a control on the wall that controls the temperature and the timing of when it turns on. This way, you can time it so if you get up at 5 in the morning and you want it warm by the time you go take your shower, it will turn on at 4 so it's nice and warm by the time you get in, and turn off when you're gone. What spacing should I have for in between my tiles? Now this is a really great question because you want to think of multiple things here. The size of your tile, proportionately how thick you want that grout line to look, and then also what you want to see when you have the full bathroom grouted in the overall look. Now, if you're working with a larger size tile, you may want to think about using a thicker grout line. The reason for that is proportionately it will look a little bit more consistent throughout the entire bathroom. Now, in some cases, I do have some clients that don't like the look of grout. They just don't like it. So in those cases, we don't use any spacers at all. So the tiles are sitting right on top of each other. But I do want to say, if you have that installation, make sure that the application is applied 100% flush and level. It's much harder to do this when you don't have spacers because those level your tiles out. So make sure that you have a level working wall on that tile. Now, if you want to learn more about bathrooms, kitchen, or general construction, see the description below. And if you want some updates on when our new videos are up, please like and subscribe. Now let's get out there and build your dream home.